Hello there. With F1 Manager 24 releasing tomorrow, I thought it would be a good idea to dive a little deeper into Create a Team and its settings so that everyone can have a little bit of an easier time creating their own dream team come tomorrow. Over the next few days, I'll also have videos out on mentality, mechanical failures, the new sponsor system, as well as car development. If you're looking forward to these, please like and subscribe as that helps me out a ton, and I would also like to give huge thanks to Frontier for giving early access. With that said, let us dive straight into Create a Team. First things first, we're going to have to pick a team name. This can be anything you want, and after that, you're going to have to pick one out of these 6 origins. The first origin is your story, which gives you an immense amount of freedom to make a challenge as easy or hard as you see fit. The other 5 are presets with different benefits, or rather starting points. If we look at the first one here, Hungry Newcomer, we basically start out with a pretty terrible car, bad facilities, bad drivers and staff. It's a very difficult starting point and probably the hardest one out of the presets. Second one here, Technical Breakthrough. You have an amazing car, you have amazing staff, terrible facilities and midfield drivers. Should still be able to have a pretty decent season, and it's an interesting challenge to see if you can keep up with a car and staff that doesn't really have facilities available to them to get the most out of it. Phoenix Rising, you have maximum facilities, you have alright staff, but your drivers and your car leaves more to be desired. Basically, you are an old giant that has kind of fallen, and it is your job to get them back up in working order. Industry Giant, you have a decent car, or rather a very good car, potentially podium fighting car. Your facilities are decent, your drivers are amazing, your staff is amazing, and the Industry Giant wants to take charge in F1 and expects you to be winning really soon. Automotive Legacy is a mid starting point for basically everything. You have a middle of the pack car, you have middle facilities, or rather pretty good facilities compared to some of the other starts. Drivers are alright, your staff is alright, and basically it's a top of the midfield-ish starting point, so it's not bad. But as mentioned, it's kind of hard probably to judge what exactly does a car level 2 actually mean. What does facilities level 2 mean? What does drivers level 2 mean? So we're going to actually take a look at that now by jumping into your story origin. To get started with, we have the team setup here, and here we can choose our starting balance, basically how much money we want to have in the bank. 40 million, 25 million, 50 million, 5 or 2. But even if you were to start with 2 million, it's not really a super bad starting point. You're going to be a little bit slow in the beginning, but there is a way to alleviate that. Now, the reason why I said starting with 2 million isn't necessarily terrible is because we are immediately, just a couple of days after starting, going to be negotiating with our sponsors. Now, our sponsors have 3 types of funding: upfront, engagement, and race day. We're interested in upfront for this one, but I'll be going over the other potential fundings in a different video later on this week. But basically, upfront funding is the money you get immediately. So if you start out with little money, you might need to, say, sacrifice a little bit of your total funding in order to get more upfront. That's going to make you a little bit more competitive. You pick your main sponsor, but you aren't actually done there. You can increase the amount of money you get because you can have up to 5 secondary sponsors, and they too can offer you some upfront funding here. As you can see, we're up to almost 30 million. And we can also go, say, for some more engagement sponsors. And with that, we now have a sponsorship of potentially 50 million for our first season. Sorry, 60 million, with an additional 20 million being race day dependent, rather result dependent. So you can still have a decent chunk of money in the bank from the get-go to develop your car, even if you start with nothing, due to how the sponsorship system works. Next up, we have facilities, and the way that this works is that even if we go 5 quality for our facilities, the maximum level we can put in here is 3, and you can actually move these levels around as you see fit. As you can see, we have levels available, but we can't exceed level 3. So for instance, even with the level 5, maximum we can do here would be this for our car development facilities. We can move a couple levels of our scouting hub in order to get more team hub and race sim. And you can kind of do the same here for your operation facilities. You are very free in what facilities you want to invest in to begin with. And depending on quality, you might just not have any investment points. In our case, we actually do have one here that we can take off to the design center to put into the factory, which honestly I would recommend, because it doesn't matter how good your design center is if you can't make the parts. So you can kind of get the idea here. You can move these around as you see fit. Some are forced on you, like the scouting department, but the boardroom, even the weather center you can move around. I believe this one, you probably want at least one in. But yeah, you can move these around to the buildings that you find more valuable. A building guide will be made in the future, but I'm not 100% sure right now. Now, car performance might be a little bit harder to judge here because it doesn't really tell you what you can expect or how good the car is going to be. So I've gone ahead and made a comparison. We're going to take a look at every single one of the 5 levels individually and then compare them against each other. We're also going to make sure that we use the key staff, as staff tends to have an effect on parts. So we'll just completely eliminate that possibility by using the same ones. Unsurprisingly, a level 1 car will put you at the back of the grid. This is us compared to Sauber, who's ranked 19th in most stats except for top speed. But as you can see here, we are basically the worst car on the grid by a mile. We're half a kph behind Sauber. We're just slightly behind in terms of cornering, but this is going to basically give you a back of the grid start that is going to be probably the most challenging. And I have tested it. Even if you reload it, you're going to end up with the same stats. So the car is going to be pretty much identical every time. Doesn't seem to be a random element in the performance of the car at this level. But yeah, a level 1 car puts you at the back of the grid just behind Sauber, and you're going to have to work on your development to make it competitive and try and make something out of your season. With a level 2 car, we've actually surpassed Sauber quite a bit, and as you see here, we're now ahead of them, which means that we have a little bit of a better starting point. And if we just go grid average, we're still far behind the grid. You're basically just the second, third worst car on the grid. So you're still going to have a hard fight, but a little bit easier than if you started down with the level 1 car. Level 2 is still going to be challenging, but at least you will at least have some fights at the back of the grid order until you get your new parts. With the level 3 car, we are getting closer to a car that can actually fight for points in Bahrain. It is basically a car that should be able to. It's 11th in a lot of stats, 15 low speed, 9th in high speed, and generally this is a car that is comparable to the RB. And as you can see, we just have it barely beat in most aspects. But this car should be able to fight for points from the get-go. You might need to have a decent strategy to get it done, maybe a little bit better driver, but either you're going to be finishing just outside the points or fighting for 9th and 10th. Provided, of course, no one crashes out. So it could be a very interesting car to start out with just due to that. It's also going to be a car that's probably going to be a little bit easy to develop into, say, a podium title contender, depending on how you do things. With the level 4 car, we are getting closer and closer to a car that can potentially fight for podiums, as it is ranked 7th to 9th in a lot of stats, and it is actually a really fast car, all things considered. With a little bit of luck, as said, a good strategy, you can potentially take this car to a podium, but you're probably going to end up finishing 5th, 6th, 7th most of the time. But as mentioned, it is a bit of an upgrade compared to the tier 3 one. The level 5 car gives us a car that is very close to the top, way better than the grid average, but even this car is not the best car there is on the grid, with 3rd in top speed, high speed, 7th in low and medium, and so again, a podium or race win contender if you will. But it's not the best car yet, and it's going to need a little bit of work. We're very close to Red Bull here in terms of the cornering. We're very close in terms of top speed. But as mentioned, this car needs a little bit of work before it's an actual race win contender, even at level 5. If you're curious about the performance gains from each level, I made this chart where I've taken the analysis of each car from level 1 to level 5. And as you can see here, you can see their top speed, their cornering ability, and how much they differ each from each other. There's some pretty standard gains there from car to car, I'd say. So this should make it probably a little bit easy to choose. But generally, the level 1 car is a backmarker. Level 2 car is still a backmarker, can fight a little bit, but very limited. Level 3 can get in the points if it has a good day. Level 4 will be basically fighting for 5th and 6th. And the 5th car can get a podium. Maybe a race win if you are lucky. To be fair, the level 4 car can also get a podium if you're lucky. That's going to be more of the rarities. So all the cars themselves do have their own ups and downs. But here you have it, all 5 levels of car. And you can choose the one that fits you the most. If you're uncertain, feel free to ask and I'll try and do my best to respond to you. I am streaming at the moment, so you might get a response a little bit later. Next up is picking your drivers and staff. And depending on if you're using your own origin or a preset one, you are going to be limited on rating. With preset ones, the rating will be locked to whatever the preset wishes, but even a tier 2 rating here or level 2 rating is drivers that go from 77 to 81. So they're not going to be terribly bad. And as you can see here, the ratings are dependent. Tier 5 is 90 plus. The tier 4 would be 86 to 89 in our case. And the third ones would be 85 to 82. So you have a lot of freedom in picking your drivers, but do keep in mind that they do have a yearly wage. Potash is 16 million, Gastry is 6. Do keep this in mind when you pick your drivers. You can also do things a little bit more interesting by choosing to have real or generated drivers here. You can go generated only, or you can even take it a little bit further and go all, which means that we have both real drivers, which are way over here, Hamilton, Alonso, but also a bunch of generated ones, even including 19-year-old wonder kids who have amazing stats, as you can see. So you're getting a little bit of unrealistic here, but you can also just go down and find, say, a 85 wonder kid here that you can then kind of train up a little bit. So you have a lot of freedom with real or generated drivers. It's up to you what you want to pick. Just do keep in mind the wages, and you should be fine. Next up, the staff kind of follows the same pattern. The rating will be locked in if you're using a preset. If not, you can choose whatever you want. Just make sure that you keep an eye on the money, because you are going to have to pay them over the course of the year. It's nothing you pay out front, but if you have a bunch of, super staff, super drivers, that can quickly become a lot of money. For instance, if I were to pick one, probably a driver pairing that a lot of people want to try out, which would be Hamilton and, say, Verstappen, that is going to cost us a tremendous amount of money, because Hamilton is 28 a year, Verstappen is 31. That's almost 60 million already just on driver costs. So if you don't have a lot of money to start off with, might be a little bit better to choose lower rated drivers and take them, basically, at least try and race them a little bit. But yeah, after that, you just pick your technical chief, head of aerodynamics, sporting director, base engineers, and here too, you can go with generator only or a combination. So if you don't want to destroy any of the current teams on the grid, basically poach their staff, you can just go with generated staff and drivers if you really, really want. And even the top level, you can find some pretty good ones. So you have a lot of freedom here with drivers and staff. Do exactly what you want. You can also, of course, go with the lower rated ones, and you can find staff down in the 65s. And in the drivers section, I think you can find drivers down to like 40 if you really, really want to try for it. 58, and if we go generated, how far can we go then? Yeah, 42, 43. So you get the idea. You can make some pretty atrocious teams if you really, really want to here. Next up, we have the powertrain, and you'll only be able to pick a powertrain if you use the choose your own origin. If not, a powertrain will be chosen for you by the origin itself. We have Ferrari, Honda, Mercedes, and Renault. And honestly, this year, I think I'm going to recommend Mercedes from the get-go. They have less power than Honda and Ferrari, but with the mechanical failures added this year, the extra durability for engine, ERS, and gearbox could come in handy, as you have a higher chance of mechanical failure the lower the condition is. The fuel efficiency might leave much to be desired, but keep in mind one of the factors in causing mechanical failures is overheating, so we don't necessarily want to push our engine to use extra fuel, as that makes it hotter and thus lowers durability quicker and potentially even causes, smaller mechanical failures and malfunctions. On the other hand, everyone else here, as you can see, Renault has less power, durability, everything. It has good fuel efficiency, but that's about it. Can't really recommend it. Ferrari, less durability, better fuel efficiency, more power. But again, we'll have to test these engines again to see just how they compare against each other. Last year's engines were very, very close, in power. So if it's the same this year, I think I can pretty much recommend running Mercedes. Finally here, we have one of the more interesting things this year, which is team branding. And the first thing we have to do is pick 3 team colors. Now, the primary color here is very important because it's going to be the color that shows up on the race map, the racetrack tracker. Your dot that represents your car is going to be represented by this color. If you want to have a pink dot representing your car, go for it. Even a purple one, adds more brightness. You can have a pink dot on the track. It's actually quite amazing. And in terms of the other colors here, add a little bit of red and maybe some gold. But yeah, you have a lot of freedom. First things first, we pick team colors. Next up is picking the car livery. And Frontier has actually made a bunch of presets here that you can work from. I find this one pretty neat. You have a bunch of different ones. Keep in mind those with the golden M here are deluxe edition ones. But there's still a tremendous amount of presets here, and some of them are more wild looking than others. And the tiger one here is actually pretty neat as well, I think. But yeah, there's a bunch of freedom. Gold, black. I do like this one. So keep that in mind. You can also save a bunch of presets here. In my case, I have messed around a little bit. Made this thing that's kind of nuts. Made this thing, which is silver and just carbon. I think it looks neat. I probably think this one's my favorite. It's just carbon fiber plus a little bit of gold to spruce this up. But you can kind of see it. I'm not very creative. I like simple designs like this one. So that is my taste. Now, if you want to make one new one, you just press new. And your first thing here is just going to be selecting a pattern. It's pretty straightforward. There's a bunch of them available. And once you've selected your pattern, in our case, we'll go with this one. But as you can see, there's things like sharks, tigers. We might as well try the shark here for good measure. But after you selected your pattern, you go to painting. And here we select our colors. So in our case, the entire shark is yellow. You can kind of see that. We have some red accents. I don't know where the pink went, but apparently shark does not like pink. And here we have a couple of choices. We can change the material to change up how the car looks. We can also just go carbon fiber, which kind of removes the color, turns everything black. But yeah, I do have picked a pretty terrible one for to kind of show off. So let's pick a little bit of a better one so we can kind of see just how the colors actually work. Yeah, as you can see now, we have pink. We can actually also change it into a gradient. We have radial, vertical, or horizontal. And what this means is just straight up that we can change things around a little bit to make, say, the back part purple and the front part green. Can also, as mentioned, turn some parts carbon fiber. It doesn't really work too well with this skin. But you do have a lot of freedom in how you design your car. And honestly, what I should have done here is just go for a very simple one, because that would have shown this off a lot better rather than going too fancy like I did. But yeah, we have, like, as you can see, the purple here turns into green halfway through. And you can have that horizontally, you can have that vertically, where it goes up from the bottom, works up. That way we can have, say, a purple front wing, but a neon green back. And you can even go radial, where it starts green in the center and becomes purple the further out you get. And you can adjust this too by just adjusting the gradients. So if we do this, purple is now further back. If we do this, purple is further to the center. You get the idea. You have a lot of freedom with this. And as mentioned, I do like that they added this carbon fiber, because it means that if you want to, you can now just make two color schemes, if you will. And again, you have a lot of freedom here in making the exact color you want, because you have saturation, brightness, as well as the hue to start off with, and then you just work from there. And yeah, I do find it to be a very, very good system. Of course, you can probably find it a little bit limiting. I'll be perfectly honest here. It might be a little bit limiting just due to the fact that they don't have too many different shapes to start off with, but you do have a lot of freedom in how you design your car. And the same really with the driver's suit. You have a bunch of presets, which is, we have gradients, we have different shapes, different colors. The sponsors here, you can actually move around to exactly where you want them. They don't need to be where they show up after you sign a sponsor contract. So again, you have a lot of freedom with this. And again, it's pretty simple to make one of these. We basically make a new one. We choose a pattern to start off with, and then we color that in. We can make a race suit that's completely different if we want from our car, and then we can also do the same for the helmet if we really want to. So you do have some freedom here. Unfortunately, the helmet doesn't have too many patterns, but we can do gradients on it. So again, a lot of freedom there to have fun. Now, the logo editor is a little bit basic, but it does get most of the... it does allow you to make some interesting logos, like, say, a wolf's head. These are just presets. We have this one, and you can make a decent bunch, to be fair. But I think a couple of people might find it a little bit lacking, let's be perfectly honest. If you enjoy sitting down making logos, you might find that the shapes that it has is a little bit too little for you. I tried to recreate my YouTube logo, couple of different iterations here, and I got pretty far, but I'm missing the Ouroboros, the snake that kind of eats its own tail, that I have as the outer layer. But to be fair, you can get pretty close. And again, the way that this thing works is pretty straightforward. You start by choosing a shape, and you can have as many shapes as you want. I think 50 different shapes, so you have a lot of freedom there. Next up, you can move it around inside a square, place it where you want it with this tool. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, you can spin it. So you actually can place it exactly where you want it, no problem. And you can even just go ahead and duplicate it if you need more of it. As such, you do have, as mentioned, a tremendous amount of freedom to get the right color, get the right placements, and you should be able to make most of the easier logos like, say, Brawn. However, as I said, I'm not a super good when it comes to making logos, so I'll leave that to you. And lastly, just fill in your team principal name, choose your difficulty, as well as guidance, and then you are ready to go. Now, as I said, I will have other videos out on F1 Manager in the future. We'll be going over development, we'll be going over the sponsor system, mentality, mechanical failures, and other things that have been added to the game, like tire preservation is actually now a car stat, as well as smoothness. So I'm looking forward to seeing exactly how that's going to pan out, how it's going to work. Yeah, hope you have enjoyed this little deeper dive into Create a Team. I might have missed some things. If I did, feel free to let me know. And if you're watching this on the day that it came out, I'm probably streaming. So you can find me on my channel. I'll be streaming F124 most of today, so hope to see you there. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you drop by to say hi, and I do hope to see you next time. Bye bye!